Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, people of all ages, welcome back to the Sticky Floors podcast. I am one of your hosts, CJ. I am joined by Mr. Will, and tonight we are talking about the kill room. The kill room, man. Not the playroom, not the bedroom. It's the kill room. That's just you know where this one is going tonight.
Oh
Don't be
man.
misled. The title tells you what this show is going to be. This is not going to appear as something for kids to be talking about and listening to tonight. So just get yourself ready for it. I'm gonna turn it over. Well, first, Mr. Will, how you doing tonight,
I'm all
man?
right,
How's
man. How you
everything
doing?
going?
How you doing?
Man, I'm just living the dream. That's what they tell you to say. In corporate, they say corporate America, you always say living the dream. I'm not in corporate America, but that's why I heard you say living the dream all the time. So that's how I'm doing. All right. So with that said, let's jump into this tonight's movie. Mr. Will, why don't you hit the audience with a breakdown and we'll get this started.
I do want to give a shout out to you real quick. In case everyone hasn't noticed, there's always a very clever, witty title to all of our shows. And the mastermind behind that is CJ. So this week, we're dealing with the death of art. For those that haven't seen The Kill Room, it's a play on that. And CJ just enlightened me like moments ago that this is also similar to a book he read. So, I just wanted to put the spotlight on CJ real quick for the creativity in our titles. And with that
Oh
being
man,
said,
thank you.
yeah, no doubt, man.
I appreciate that.
And
And cash out you some money right after this, man. I got you. I got your back.
and with that said, I'm a pleasantly introduce the audience to the synopsis. So we're dealing with a film that attempts to equate the viciousness between both the desperate ciphers. Yes, this is there is an intertwining of the two, but alas, there is no typical. This isn't a typical mob movie as it's declawed. We're talking about the violence being minimized and performed off screen. The critique of the art environment solely relies on the broad and visceral comedy. The movie focuses upon Gordon, played by Samuel L. Jackson, a black Jewish deli and bakery owner in league with the mob, who approaches Patrice, played by Uma Thurman, with a tantalizing offer. Gordon is an associate of an assassin, and they work in tandem. That assassin's name is Reggie, played by Joe Manganiello. Um, he is the brawn behind the operation, and he assists by painting purely for a high valuation as a means for money laundering.
There it is. So we got murder and money. Uh, always seem to go together pretty well.
Yes, sir.
And this movie is no different in that. What's interesting is that like I was watching this I've never seen this movie before until we were doing it for the show, and I was thinking like, is this a comedy? Is this a
Mm.
drama? I didn't, and then I was like, oh, this is what they call. Well, I think when I looked at it, it said black comedy, but you said it's a dark.
Yeah.
So apparently, the search engine I used was racist because it said black comedy, which that's not good. But it was interesting because like I this is a real genre
Yeah. Yeah.
of movies and television shows
Mhm.
that kind of deal with like things that are not really funny, but
Mm.
they try to deal with them in a funny way.
Yeah.
And it was kind of, and this is not. I think from watching this movie, what I realized is I'm squarely like a drama,
Mm.
like a lover of drama, right? So I like Goodfellas,
Okay.
right? But I'm not necessarily like a comedy person. Would you say that you're more like a person that like likes black comedy, drama, comedy?
Mm.
Like, what's your preferred genre of movies?
I'll give you a prime example. Um I like the movie with Steve Carell. I can't think of the title offhand, but he is it's called The Virgin. Um, he plays
40-year-old
yeah,
virgin,
40-year-old virgin.
virgin, yeah, 40-year-old
He
virgin, yeah, yeah.
plays a very dry individual with a witty sense of
Hmm.
humor, and then there's certain things that don't play into a cultural aspect, if you will, that you wouldn't expect him
Hmm.
to say. And there's a scene in particular. I think the gentleman's name is Romello or something along those lines. Bald headed dude. He's in Think Like a Man.
I know you're talking about.
Yeah, and that scene, and also the scene with I don't know if the gentleman is Pakistani or Indian, so please forgive me. And the two of them play off of each other as well. So just like those stereotypes, cultural like mingling of the two. Like I once heard it said that
Mm.
it's very hard to find someone who listens to Wu Tang but understands Jerry Seinfeld, but can also order at Starbucks while walking through the South Bronx. So it's kind of like a melding of that.
I like that, and that person is you. You're the person that can do that. Okay, all right.
Appreciate
I'll tell you off the top. I can't order anything at Starbucks. I'm that person that
it.
when I go in there, they be like, "Sir, what do you want?" And I'm like, "I think I want tea, but with milk in it. Like, how does that work?" Like, I don't know. People be mad at me. I stopped going to real Starbucks. I go to Starbucks like in stores. So like people are there for something else. So they're not as mad when you're taking time in there. But
Oh,
but anyway, so this okay, so we got I know where you are on the cast.
yeah.
Joe Manganiello, Sam Jackson, Uma Thurman. So Sam Jackson, I gotta just spend a little time with Sam. Like, so look, I love Sam, right? But sometimes it feels to me like Sam is making like business decisions or vacation decisions based on the business. And what I mean by it, like we talked about Sam
Hmm.
Jackson in when we did the Marvels, right?
Hmm.
And like, yeah, I love Sam, but when I watched this joint, I kept thinking to myself, like, did Sam like have a vacation that he wanted to pay for? And he's like, I don't want to use my own money. Let me get this money from the kill room and I'm gonna do it that way. Because like it just there's certain movies I just feel like Sam Jackson is like, all right, just give me the check. Give me the check. Give me this beard. Give me this. He wears a beanie with a buckle on it. I've never seen that before.
Oh man.
This is like high level fashion, high level New York City fashion. And it's like even the whole like you mentioned like in the movie, like even the idea of like him as the black Jew, like that is a thing that it's a part of the movie, but it's not really a part of the
But
movie at the same
I
time.
get where you're going. I think it's the fact that, all right, let's go back to the Starbucks thing, right? I've never had coffee ever to this day. I go to
Okay.
Starbucks though to order their fake juice, like juice soda thing or whatever it is, like that mixture, that
Hmm.
cocktail. So I guess it's like a tea slash juice. Most people don't know perhaps the origins of Judaism, where Sam Jack being a black Jew, that's not really foreign if he was born in Ethiopia or if he was born in Israel. So when
Yes.
it's brought
Good
here
point.
into the United States, it seems out of place. But culturally, throughout the globe, he's right at home. And I think the same thing is true with this movie. It borrows a bunch of stereotypes, plays it off against them, but stereotypes exist for a reason because humans are
Mm,
very limited in their vocabulary and their understanding, so they make generalizations. Sweeping ones, yes. Indictful ones,
mhm.
yes. But when done in earnest and sincerity, it's only because they're trying to truly comprehend and maybe voice their appreciation. In the movie, you have this snobbish art world that's being criticized and critiqued for being
Absolutely.
pretentious and obnoxious and snobbish and outright just elitist. But then
Hmm.
you have Uma Thurman's character who she says, look, I did discover this artist who was supposed to be this upcoming, very bright and very like polarizing star, and everyone thought I was
Hmm.
crazy when I dropped him. Um, but in actuality, he was chauvinist. He was misogynist. He was someone that I
Hmm.
couldn't, get along with or see myself working with in a consistent basis. Obviously,
Got it.
her characters and her morals change because she's working with criminals now. So,
And I want to get to that too. Yeah, yeah, that's no, that's a good point. I appreciate you giving that historical information about the idea of the term black Jews and where that comes
Mhm.
from. I think that's actually really relevant and helpful because there's been a lot of different things said on different platforms about even the idea of that. So I definitely appreciate that. I do want to talk about something you raised, the idea of the pretentious nature of the artistic world, the
Mhm.
way that it's shown here. I don't know what that world looks like, but it's interesting. On the idea of stereotypes, this is actually what I think it is like.
Mhm.
So it's interesting how now that when you're saying that, I have to acknowledge that I have certain stereotypes that are really uninformed And yet, if someone presents that stereotype to me, it's like confirmation bias in a sense that makes me feel like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I thought.
I think it fits that because we're in an echo chamber. We literally hear the same thing over and over. We repeat it, and then in turn, those that are very close to us, or somehow we looked up to, or a peer, whatever it is, they also mimic and voice those same concerns. But I happen to have some friends who happen to delve into the art world, whether it be sculptors, painters, graphic designers, people who are actually illustrators, even tattoo artists, and it's nothing like that. Is it eclectic? Yep, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a meeting of the minds, if you will. Like everyone from every sector comes together because they have a true affinity for what's being portrayed or what's being presented in that sphere. And I think that's the commonality. Whether you like anime, or you happen to like the Mona Lisa, or you happen to like whatever sculpture or avant-garde style, I think there's that passion in all of us stemming from being able to create. Some people, as you mentioned in the pre-production meeting, whether it is through dance, through drawing, through singing, or even I think giving life, giving birth, having children, sewing, cooking, baking, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is. I think these are all forms of expression, from your handwriting to even our podcast.
Absolutely. So that's you said something else too, which I think is really interesting. We said the idea about the tattoo
Mm-hmm.
parlor, right? So I've been in those places, and the thing that I think is so interesting when I'm in there is that there's all kinds of types of people there.
Mm-hmm.
There's young people, old people, people of all different races, different genders, whatever the case may be. They're in there either appreciating work, thinking about getting work done,
Mm-hmm.
getting more work done, or doing the work. Music, I remember years ago, I went to see, I saw Nas at the Kennedy Center,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
And this was the 20th anniversary of Illmatic. So Nas is there, he's performing on Kennedy Center,
Mm-hmm.
kind of more of an upscale venue, a place where you're going to see like more haughty kind of art, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what I thought was amazing about the experience was that I'm there. I've been a Nas fan since the 90s, right? Early 90s. And there were people in there that were much older than me, older white people, older Hispanic people, young black people, whatever. Everybody was there to appreciate the art of, that experience of seeing Nas. I bring that back to this movie because what's interesting is that the world around these characters is all kinds of the same people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because it's like there are some racial differences, like there are Asian characters, there's white characters, there's Italian characters, but they're all the same
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to like how they look at art.
Well, I think that's the other thing too. Like hangs with like. Birds of a feather flock together. So you're going to find, your um, doppelganger, maybe with a different hue, or with a different hairstyle, or even a different gender. Who knows? But I think the fact that there is someone out there that is similar to us. Maybe not the exact same, but they have similar traits, similar designs, similar fascinations. I think that that person exists in despite our cultural differences, our language differences, whatever it may be. So in this movie, for example, you had mentioned this before. Um, in the town, the movie starring Ben Affleck and Jeremy Renner, we have the character of Fergie, played by the late
Hmm.
great Pete, and I'll
Yeah.
probably butcher his last name, Postlethwaite, and he plays a florist at the end who's like giving the
Hmm.
business to this young
Yeah.
group of uh,
Gangsters, basically.
I
they're
want to be
gangster. They're
delicate about it, but
gangsters.
yeah, you got to call it what it is. These gangsters, right? And you mentioned it in the pre-production meeting. Sam Jack is the lighthearted comedic version of Pete's
He is.
Fergie. And
He is.
and
He
when you
is.
brought it up, I didn't even hesitate to agree with you because it was just so like I could picture both of them side by side, like a
Hmm.
split screen of the two of them, and I was just like, yeah, you know what, that is brilliant. And so for those that haven't seen that movie, if you see it, trust me, you'll automatically come to the same conclusion as I. And I think that piggybacks off of the theme of the duality that exists within all of us, but finding a common ground due to a shared like, a shared experience, a shared love, passion, or even a fervor for the things that we're able to create in the world, because we all have an ability to create. Just some are a little bit more gifted than others.
Yeah, yeah, and that ends up being like one of the major themes in this
Yeah.
movie because one of the main characters, Reggie, as you said it said in the introduction, he develops this appreciated value for creating art,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's interesting, like what like I do one of the things I really like about this movie, and we'll talk about it when we get into the cake, is just the way that it talks about art.
Yeah.
And you have this character that creates art, but part of what creates value in this movie is the idea of something being in limited supply
Mm.
and the ability to create interest in it. So if something, if like it's basically supply and demand.
Yeah.
If there's only one of something, or there's less than one of some, or less than a small number of something, it becomes more valuable. And it's funny because when I was thinking about this, I was thinking, I know this is a little bit of a divergence, but I was thinking about that Wu-Tang album
Mm.
from a couple of years ago. When you mentioned
Yeah.
Wu-Tang
Yeah.
a second ago, it made me think about it as well. Who remember the guy bought the Wu-Tang
Yeah.
album
Martin
for 2
Scorsese,
mil?
Martin Scully.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. He bought it and then nobody could hear it.
Right.
Right.
Right. For $2
I
billion
think you were
dollars
saying
at that.
right. And then as you was telling me or reminding me, he actually got his assets seized by the
Yeah.
government, and then the government sold it,
Yeah.
and they sold it for like another
He went to jail for a
7
hot
mil.
minute, man. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, and that was like the maybe one of the things surrounding him. I mean, this guy raised the prices on insulin, and then he
That's
tried to
right.
justify
That's
it by
right.
saying, "Well, this pays
That's
for other
right.
development of other drugs that could cure
That's
other
right.
illnesses and ailments." Um,
That's right.
but I say that to say, your reference of a Once Upon a Time in Shaolin is a brilliant, once again, a brilliant example of art cultivating an interest. Um, and I think what capsulates that is this joint I watched with Pharrell. It was like a snippet of him. I think he was on Nori's podcast with DJ FNM. Um, DJ FN. What's his name? Is it FN or FNN?
FNN.
Yeah,
FNN. Yeah.
FNN. Yeah, and on Drink Champs, and he was like
Mhm.
something to, and I'm paraphrasing. I hate to butcher it, but Pharrell was like, creativity or the ability to create art or talent without business sense is a tragedy because it leads to exploitation. Whereas
Mm.
having a business acumen but no creativity, that's just tomfoolery, and that's not the word he used. He actually used
Yeah.
the F word. And I say
Hmm.
that to say, here you have Wu Tang as the symbol for this movie. They were the reason why Wu Tang has such a cult following that has now developed amongst any generation from great
Hmm.
grandparents, literally, like from my father's age all the way
Yeah. People
down,
love Wu-Tang.
is because, they intersect at so many crossroads. You
Yeah.
have people of that generation who can remember or harken back to what it was like to come up during those times. But then they were
Hmm.
also able to mimic George Clinton in the sense of the business acumen, where they were able to split things up. So everybody had their
Yes.
own solo
Yeah.
deal. Then once RZA
Hmm.
had his own publishing, and he also had his own record label, the next thing was distribution, but simultaneously you had Power and Divine working out Woo
Hmm.
Wear. Then they had Woo Nails. Then they had
Yeah.
a plethora of books coming out, and
Hmm.
now they have podcasts, and everybody's doing their own thing, and they're very successful, and they're able to have now in Las Vegas their own residency, all
Yeah. I
because
saw that.
you had a bunch of dudes in a couple of different projects and a couple of different boroughs come together for the love of music. Hence why you have
Yeah.
this movie. you know you have these individuals who started out doing criminal things. They needed to launder their money, make it legitimate, et cetera, et cetera. In Joe Manganiello's case, here's a guy who was trying to help his sister out, who is indebted to the mob due to having a drug habit, and the drug dealer
Hmm.
was an agent of the mob. He ends up getting into kerfluffle with the drug dealer. Unfortunately for the both of them, the drug dealer passes due to the uh, difference of a
Bag.
period. Yeah. Hence the name, the bag man.
Due to him being the bag.
And then here you have him basically in a lifetime sentence of being a murderer. And
So I love that, man. So basically, so what you're saying is the kill room is an allegory for Wu-Tang Clan. That's what
I would,
that,
I think it's the other way
that's
around.
basically
I think it's the other way
the
around.
Wu-Tang Clan is an allegory for the kill room.
Yeah.
Got it. Either way, that's dope. All right, so that went in a completely different area, different kind of way than I thought it was going to. Um, but that's dope though. I appreciate that. I also thought that this movie kind of pulls from a couple of other
Mm,
like more familiar kinds of movies. There is a show we talked about this earlier, but there's a show called Barry,
yeah.
and Barry deals with the idea of like it's an HBO. I guess it's called Max. I don't even know if it's called HBO anymore.
Yeah.
It's
I think it's like
Max.
Max on the
Is
app
it
and
called?
HBO on like
Yeah, is it
whatever.
still okay? Yeah, I got apps, so it's Max.
Yeah.
So on Max, there used to be a show. There used to be a show called Barry, and Barry was about an assassin who discovers that he wants to be an actor,
Yep.
right? And it's played by Bill Hader,
Hmm.
who was on Saturday Night Live at one time. And I watched a couple episodes enough to know that the idea that everybody wants to be something else, and that sometimes like your profession is what the main barrier is, was something that was coming through in this movie. So I think like that was like one of the things I was getting some vibes from. And then I also saw like a little bit like the Sex in the City kind of vibe. And maybe that's because of the clothes that are being worn, the characters, and the idea of like a certain sort of social class.
Mm.
Maybe that's what's kind of making a distinction between some of the people in the movie. And then at the end, probably to my dismay, it had like an Ocean's 11 kind of vibe. So I feel like it kind of pulled these, and I mean that makes sense. I mean, this is a movie that came out in 2023.
Right.
So why wouldn't it be informed or affected by movies that came before it?
Oh, well, everything is influenced by its predecessor. So, I mean, that goes without
Mhm.
saying. And I think that uh, the director, the screenwriter, they drew from their own experiences, whether it be their love of those different films and TV shows and
Mhm.
such, or if it was maybe some little bit of autobiographical in there. Um, which reminds me actually of a point you made about Sam Jack basically getting his vacation on in a lot of
You
these
getting that
movies.
vacation
And
money from this
it
one,
really
man.
had me like running through my mental Rolodex of like movies that he started. And I was like, man, has it been since 2012 in Django Unchained when he played Steven that he really like
Mhm.
gave a commanding performance? And then I was glad to have been proven wrong. The Glass, that whole M. Night Shyamalan joint, that was in 2000.
Oh, Mr. Glass.
That's
Yeah, yeah,
2018. So I started
yeah,
thinking like, wait a second, you know, Nick Fury. So I'm
yeah,
running down like the Avengers
yeah,
movies, and I'm like, all
yeah.
right.
Okay,
So I got to come to his defense because I like Sam Jack, man.
okay.
That's one of my dudes.
Yeah, so do I. I do, and I will say that the Glass is a good reference point. I liked him a little bit more in Unbreakable.
Yeah,
I didn't like Glass. Well,
we'll get
that might be worth a
yeah.
show one day.
But I
Absolutely.
even liked him in The Hitman's Wife. I mean, The Hitman's Bodyguard and The Hitman's Wife, because that borrows upon the same themes and same tropes in this show, in
Yeah,
this
it
joint,
is.
where he is a
It is.
good comedic actor. And I think that's why I like this movie because, again, he's flexing his comedic
Mhm.
chops, but in a more dry, witty, dark sense of humor type of way.
Absolutely. And I would say that in that sense, the apex for him doing that is the Long Kiss Goodnight.
Yeah, 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 yeah. With
I think he's like with Gina
Davis,
Davis.
yes,
He's amazing in
yeah.
that as that character where he's like kind of funny, but he's in like this really wild, super violent
Well,
situation,
that's
but he
similar.
brings some comedic levity to it.
Yeah, I think that's similar to what's the movie we did? The Bruce Willis Hard to Kill. I mean, Die Hard. What was that 3 that he was in?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So he was in Die Hard 3. Yeah, we did Die Hard for
yeah.
Christmas movies.
But
Yeah.
that was making me think of it. Similar role
Yeah,
where
Die
he
Hard for a
has
Vengeance. Yeah.
like the very strong presence, the usage of
Hmm.
his favorite term.
Hmm.
Like him saying very outlandish things at what may be
Hmm.
deemed at inappropriate times. His
Yeah.
delivery. Yeah, that's when he's
Like Pulp Fiction.
yeah, that's when he's at his best.
So we've identified the Sam Jackson
No
genre.
doubt.
Violent comedy.
Well,
that's
hey,
the that's what it is. Violent comedy is like the Sam Jackson zone. So when you see a movie, if it's a violent comedy, it's like, okay, Sam's gonna kill this right
and
here.
trust and believe, CJ has a Ben Affleck one too.
Oh yeah, the Ben Affleck joint is what is it, Goon or Wall Street? If he has to do one of those two things, he's gonna kill that role. All right, so I want to talk about. I know you always talk a lot about the character or about the actors. So Joe Manganiello, right?
Yeah.
He's got an interesting kind of journey to this movie, and I think you might want to highlight a couple of
Yeah,
points on
no,
that.
definitely. I think the fact that he plays the good-hearted, natured, thrust into a bad situation, hero, anti-hero, protagonist slash antagonist, I think that plays well. That's really where he delves into his bad creativity. Here you have an older brother trying to protect his sister, so you have that
Hmm.
stereotype, that generalization. And he does so in his own unique way by unfortunately causing the demise of the threat, which is the drug dealer who's in deep with the mob. So in turn, he takes on her debt. Simultaneously, when
Hmm.
he becomes, this avant-garde superstar, she comes with a big container of lasagna to
Hmm.
this art festival, this showcase of his talent. So it also shows the quirkiness, the uncouth hillbilly trope where this is the outsider coming into the sophisticated world and they clash.
Hmm.
And I think the fact that with respect to him, he plays a very brooding, very introverted, what is it, you know kind of like
I'm just gonna say Bagman for everything that you said. Like if you take a break, I'm gonna call him the
I
Bagman.
think the person that I could draw a parallel to is Judd Nelson's character in The Breakfast Club. Like that's the person I think
Mm,
of from like '86 that everyone tends to follow after, where he's the cool guy, but he's an outlaw. He's on the
yeah.
outskirts, whatever have you. And I think
Yep.
Joe really personifies that well in this movie, and he manages to form a rapport with Uma Thurman, who's able to see past like all of the grittiness and the darkness that he's exhibiting by seeing the best in him and admiring that quality of, oh no, it's not the art that has my eye. No, that right there, that's your actual monumental point. The display of the
Hmm.
bags being crumbled up and in a certain array that capsulates like what it is that we're trying to express. The dark
Yeah.
grittiness of New York, yet contrasted with the everyday usage. Here we are, not recycling, and the oceans are full of plastic.
All those all those
Yeah,
themes.
all
Yeah.
together.
Yeah. And then I will say though, when I was watching it, I kept thinking, oh man, this guy might have been good as Deathstroke.
Yeah, yeah.
I was thinking that. I was thinking that from the end of Batman versus
Mm-hmm.
Superman,
Mm-hmm.
when he's on the boat with Lex Luthor. So that would have been
It's
cool
definitely a
there
missed
too.
opportunity, man.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. It really is. All right. So let's pivot to some of the cake. I know I got some things here that I wanted to highlight. And you've brought it up, but there was one line that really stood out to me, and it's a line Uma Thurman actually says
Mhm.
to the character Reggie when she says, "When you make art from a truthful place, people find out about you."
Mm.
And I just thought like that is so. It's a simple line, but there's so much truth in it. Anything that comes authentically from who you are and from your soul, from your spirit, is it does tell the world about you. Like anything I think anything that you produce and you put it out for the world, it lets people see who you are, what you really think. And it's also a very scary place,
Mm.
for anyone that has, you produced anything and you put it up for scrutiny. It's a hard thing to do, because you don't know what people are going to say and you can't control that. Like you and I, we go through that now,
Mhm.
like with the idea of a podcast, like you never know what people are going to say. You never know if people are going to like it, not like it, if it's going to get not so much likes, but is it going to get attention? Like, are people going to acknowledge it enough to say this was worth my time.
That's
It's a
interesting.
hard place to be,
That's interesting that you
you
would
know.
say that. See, I would liken it to our children. Human beings are the only species that I can think of that come to mind that actually try to replace themselves with a better version of themselves. And they utilize in tandem,
Mhm.
in partnership, some type of synchronicity, a interdependentness of another person. When you find the quote unquote right person, the both of you are able to exude such a fervor, passion, which culminates in love. And that symbol of it is your children, and in turn, that creation goes off into the world. You have your heart, your emotions on your sleeve. You have no control over
Mhm.
what they're going to do, what may happen to them. It's not the question that you don't trust your children, you don't trust the world. So then in turn,
Mhm.
you want to wrap them in bubble wrap and hope that, nothing happens to them. And then in turn, while they're out there, they're more affected and directed by their peers than they are the teachings at home oftentimes. It's like the blind leading the blind, but the man with one eye, he's king. And then in turn, I'm not saying that there are creations in ownership or possession, but like the art, like this podcast, like this movie with the director, it is held up to scrutiny. What's the first thing that people
Yeah.
say? Oh, I don't blame the parents. I mean, I don't blame the children. I blame the parents for the messed up behavior that the children are on display. Oh, the parents didn't discipline them. Oh, they have no home training. Things of that.
Mhm.
Didn't your parents teach you any etiquette? These things are
Mhm.
are talked about. Or my last name is the name that comes before your first name, where in a lot of cultures they're
Mhm.
known by their last name. So I think,
Mhm.
this movie talks about or speaks to that idea of, hey, we're vulnerable, we're exposing ourselves. Hopefully you get it, hopefully it's received well, hopefully it's a beautiful presentation of what I'm trying to display. Hence, oftentimes you'll meet people's representatives before you meet their true authentic selves. And I think that's the case with this movie as well. Joe's very off-putting, he's distancing. Sam Jack is the one who you're introduced to first when it comes to the meeting of
Mhm.
Uma Thurman, and not necessarily the bag man, as CJ would say,
Yeah.
going and presenting like, here's the offer. No, you need someone a little bit more refined. And the presentation of, oh, wait, you're Jewish and you own a deli and you're over here and you're killing
Yeah,
people.
and he doesn't he makes something not that's not
Yeah,
bagels,
you know what I mean?
but it's bagels.
Yeah, so it's very off-putting at first, but then you grow more comfortable as far as the presentation coming before you.
Yeah. You sound like somebody who likes movies and has kids, man, based on everything you just based on everything you just said there. So one of the other things that I like about this movie is the idea of something. It's almost like sometimes it's called like the bigger fool theory, which is that if you have something, it has value to the degree that it can be sold to someone else
Mm,
for more value. And there's this idea, one of the things with art, and it is the idea like you buy it at one price and then one day you can sell it for something even
mhm.
more. And I know like in the world of cryptocurrency, you see this a lot with different assets and different coins. But I remember a couple years ago there was like this big thing with
Yeah,
NFTs. And NFTs were like people were buying all these different things. And the idea was like if I buy an NFT, I can then sell it at someone else to at a greater
right.
value. And then there actually became a business framework around this where people were selling NFTs as albums, and
Mhm.
then the artist would get a cut every time it sold. Unfortunately, there was a crypto winter, and it kind of canceled things out for a while. And maybe now it's back in play again. But the idea of peering behind the curtain of how art is given value, how people become connected to the ability to buy art, the idea of people wanting to have an intimate relationship with the artist. I want to get to know the person, which is what kind of drives the drama at the end with the Russian oligarch, are all I thought interesting parts of the movie. And I liked those parts. So that's what I have for Cake is like that the idea of the way the artist talked about, and then just the idea of how value is created in art.
No, I could appreciate that, man. It actually touches upon some of the things I happen to like too. I like the lightheartedness of the movie. It doesn't always take itself too serious. You'll see like some of the jokes, some of the banter back and forth, the wittiness, which leads to the pace. Definitely like the pace of the movie. You
Mm-hmm.
remain engaged. There isn't really much of a dry spell. Sure, for some people, I could see how the beginning of the movie appears to be clunky. However, I enjoyed the fact that the contrast of the light and the dark, the cinematography, all lending itself to the pace of the movie. As the movie further progresses, you see more lightheartedness scenes. You see more light. They actually change venues. They go from New York to Florida. So
Hmm.
I think all of that is done intentionally. And then last but not least, as usual, I like the cast. I think the trio, and I guess it kind of harkens to this being a bootleg version of Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, where you have Uma Thurman,
Hmm.
Sam Jack, and Joe Manganiello. Um, I'm probably butchering his last name. All pardons due. I guess it beats calling him excuse me, Mister or X, should I say, Sofia Vergara. But nonetheless, um, the cast, they tend to not take themselves so seriously. It seems like they really
Hmm.
like being around each other. They're playing off of each
Hmm.
other. Uma Thurman and Sam Jackson obviously have been in a few movies together, namely Pulp Fiction. And
Yep.
so and even in what is it, Kill Bill 1? Yeah, Kill Bill 1, where they talk about her getting married and in the chapel, and he's actually the singer, the piano
Oh,
player
okay.
in
Okay.
that scene. So yeah, obviously there's a familiarity there, thus a comfort level. Um, I definitely like the way that they play off of each other. You see the contrasting styles. Um, I think it complements itself very well. And then you got some cameo appearances from Maya Hawke, Ethan Hawke, and Uma Thurman's daughter. You have
Yep. I saw that one.
yeah,
Yep.
and then you have Matthew Mayer, Marianne Rendon, Liv Morgan. So like, there's a lot of actors, character actors in there that you may know by face, and you'll be like, oh, I remember her. She was in such and such, or he was in yada yada. I remember that cameo appearance. So I always try to pay attention to the individuals trying to bring light to the writer's work, and I think the cast was put together very well.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, that was it's also nice. It's got to be nice to be able to work with your
Oh
child
yeah.
and for Uma Thurman to be able to do that with her daughter. I'm sure that was a special moment for them. Okay, so to get into the hate, I don't have a lot of stuff here. I only have two, and I feel like I kind of mentioned them before, so I'm not really going too much. Um, there was something about the character. I didn't really like any of the characters in the movie. I just didn't. I just didn't like it. I know I'm trying. It sounds more harsh than it, or maybe it doesn't sound as harsh as what I'm actually saying.
Yeah.
I just didn't like all the. I thought everybody was like pretentious. They just had no loyalty. They were transactional. I know that in the sense of the dark comedy, it has to deal with a serious matter in a funny way.
Mhm.
And what I think I realized in watching this is that maybe this is not my preferred um, genre of
Mm.
film because it annoyed me that there was such a flippant kind of conversation around the idea of like killing people
Mm.
like that. That just kind of annoyed me. So that's one of the things I didn't like. I also talked about it a little bit about like with Barry and Sex and the City, and Ocean's 11. This is like a real swagger jacking film right here. They jacked a lot of the
They bite Nah
yo
style.
everything. They did everything, man. They couldn't make a movie after this because they bit everybody's style after this movie right here. So it was that type of joint. Those were my main knocks.
um, I don't want to call them dislikes, but the things that I noticed that weren't on par were the following. The importance of killing the Russian oligarch. I didn't understand that. Maybe it was something left on the cutting room floor, but why this desire, this fervor to get rid of this guy? Like, what did he do?
Yeah,
It
yeah.
really had to. It didn't explain itself. Um,
It, it was a Deus ex machina
yeah,
in the middle of the movie.
something, man.
It was. It's like, oh, we have the red
Hmm.
file,
Like,
and how'd they get the red? How'd they figure out who was on the red file? And then, well,
yeah,
anyway,
you know what I mean? Like, you're thinking like this is something that's top secret or government issued. Like, how'd you get
what is that?
you're just a mob dude.
How'd you get
Yeah,
it?
how'd you get it?
How'd you get it?
So,
Right.
that didn't make much sense to me. I had some questions about, there's no fear when, like, I don't know, when I think of the mob, Russian mob, Italian mob,
Mhm.
Yakuza, you name it, any mob, I'm fearful, man. Like I don't want no parts of that, man. I'm not trying to disrespect. I don't want no knocks on my door. I'm not trying to wake up to no horse heads. I'm not trying to wake up blindfold. None of that, man. Like, yo, you do you. I'm over here. But in
Mhm.
this movie, there was no fear of this guy, even when they're in the dark dining room area, the back of the restaurant, whatever. He's got
Yeah,
this
I
big
yeah, I
butcher
didn't like
knife.
that scene.
Like, there was nothing. I
Yeah,
was thinking he was going to kill somebody, one of his henchmen, for failing him or whatever have you. Nah,
yeah,
none of that.
yeah.
It was just implied.
He needed to cut Uma Thurman's finger off or something in
Something.
there. Patrice he needed something needed to be done to make it seem like he wasn't playing around,
Yeah.
and it just didn't happen.
No, not at all.
It just didn't it just yeah, yeah, it just didn't happen.
And that
Any
I think that leads to my last point though. The lack of violence, because everything was done off
mm,
screen or it's inferred. You don't really get to see. I mean, like, sure, um, which is really weird. They killed their friend or associate, the guy that they were getting information from about, like the art dealer and him buying the art, whatever. But that was done
mhm,
later on. And it was done at night, and it was like really like, and then it just cut to the other
yeah.
scene. So like stuff like that just felt a little weird.
I think when you position the assassin as one of the main characters, you have to you have to walk a delicate balance
Mm.
between showing him to be a killer while also still making him likable.
Yeah,
And I think they had to kind of figure out how to do that, which is why the violence is not it's not like really graphic.
but
It's not even the idea of killing somebody with a bag, like, there's other ways.
I I think people are missing CJ's point. If we ever do like a behind the scenes look, some of the stuff that he says is hilarious, and it would lend itself to why he's saying what he's saying. So
Yeah,
I'll try and say some of it for him. I think the fact that um, the bags that he uses resemble like the very flimsy bags that you would find
yeah,
in a shopping center or
yeah.
whatever have you, and it doesn't leave any.
Those are A&P
Yeah,
bags.
it doesn't lend any credence to being a weapon of mass destruction, if you will.
That's not going. Look, first of all, if somebody ever runs up on you with a bag and puts a bag over your head, immediately open your mouth and poke a hole in the bag so you get it some time to think about what's going on. Like, that's like there's got to be a YouTube video with that as a self defense thing for somebody to do. Second, these are bags like you when they show the bags he's making the art from. Those are bags that like you get at the store. Like, you can blow a hole. You can blow a hole through right those by accident. If you put a warm drink in there, it's gonna go through that bag. So come on, you're not. This dude is a mass. He killed like 18 people with bags, and we're supposed to believe that.
I- I'm
That's
thinking they're
that
the
was
heavy duty
ridiculous.
joints, man, like the thick,
No, they weren't,
the
man. No,
quality
they weren't.
plastic.
They weren't, man. Those are bodega bags. Those are not high quality bags. They're not gonna choke a grown man out who's fighting for his life and his survival. No, that's not gonna work. But anyway, all right. I got some questions. I
Shoot,
got
yeah.
I got some questions. All right. One of them was going to be, can you really kill someone with a paper bag? But I'm done with that. I think I'm good there. Here's my question: is this right? Okay. So, and you got into this a little bit in the beginning. So Patrice, the character of Patrice, right? She's okay working with Reggie when she thinks he's a drug dealer,
Mhm,
but when she thinks he's a murderer, now she has a problem with it, right? It made me think: if you're on a plane, right? You got to be on a plane for 3 hours.
mhm.
You're on a flight and you got to choose to sit next to one of these three types of people. One of them is a thief, the other one is a murderer, and the last one is a child molester. Which one are you going to choose to sit next to for the 3 hours?
Well, there is a pecking order.
Yeah, there is.
You know what? I think I'm going to run in this order: the pedophile, the the uh, the kleptomaniac, and then the violent assailant who causes the unliving of others. Yeah,
Right,
I
okay.
think I'm going in that direction
All right. So now, why'd you pick that one? Why'd you?
because if you're dealing with somebody who is a lover of um
No, don't try to make it sound. No, don't try to dress that one up. A pedophile is good. Don't try to make it sound.
I j-
Don't add any elegance to it.
I I
Pedophile. So
just
that's the first person.
I
Okay.
just I but I'm also trying to be mindful of YouTube and stuff. But I think with those individuals, I don't know, for some reason, again, stereotypes, I could just manhandle. Like I'm thinking of like some geeky bookworm, and I'm just like, you're lucky I just don't slap you. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
um the the profiteer, the Robin Hood theory type of practitioner. I'm thinking like,
Cold blooded thief.
yeah, I'm thinking
He's the
like
thief.
I don't carry that many things in my pockets, so like
Hmm.
you're not going to get me. You know what I mean? Like you just keep your hands to yourself in your lap at all times where I can see them and we good. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And whereas the latter, um, that dude, I'm thinking like, all right, I'm gonna be on guard the entire flight. You know what I mean? Like,
Right. You're never gonna sleep.
yeah,
You're
no,
never
I'm
gonna
not.
close your
No,
eyes.
not for a second. And I'm sitting by the outer portion. I'm sitting by the walkway. I'm not. You're not gonna catch me uh, sitting by the window and have him pull a what you call it, an Arnold Schwarzenegger commando move on me in the airplane. No, that's not happening.
You're dead for the whole trip.
Yeah, no,
Right.
that's not.
I got
No.
you. Okay. All right. So there we just covered the hierarchy of criminals by
Yeah,
just answering that
no
question.
doubt.
All right. Here's my second question. This is my last one too. All right. In this movie, so there's like this interesting thing that happens where the cast or certain characters, like they see the art, and for some of them the art turns them on even though we know it's made from a violent place. Made me start thinking about why there's so many movies where sex and violence are usually right
Hmm.
together. You see this a lot of time in horror movies. So my question for you is, why is there a close relationship in film between sex and violence?
Well, one, you're talking about just from being able to capture that on screen. It's a very visceral act or acts. So
Hmm.
both of them come from a place of adrenaline, blood flowing, blood
Hmm.
rushing. It's very, very intimate and personal. Usually
Hmm.
when someone commits these type of crimes, you know, the first thing you'll hear is, "Nah, you're not doing no drive-bys. No, you're going to use a blade. This way, you know that you've done it with intent and you get to see the person and you experience
Hmm.
every thrust, et cetera, et cetera." And I'm using that word for a reason because then it
Hmm.
lends itself to, the other act of intercourse and such. So therefore, I think just from a directorial standpoint, these things tend to blend very well on the screen. It's almost like they're so palpable that it jumps off of the screen and into your face, like right there in your living room or in your lap at the movie
Hmm.
theater. So I think that's one of the real reasons why they use that.
Got it. That makes sense for what you see in horror movies,
Mm-hmm.
because horror movies used to always have a lot of a mix of that. I don't know what horror movies are like now because I don't really
No,
go
well,
and watch them as
you
much.
already know how I feel. So,
Yeah. All right, those are my questions. I'm good. What you got?
oh man, I'm running with the first one, which is, what do you think happens to Reggie after he gets off that boat, or does he get off that boat?
He's dead in 2 weeks. That's what I think. Reggie said.
Care to
I'm
elaborate?
not even. I'm not even gonna hold you on this one. This is like the end of the movie, the weird Ocean's 11 type thing that
Mm-hmm.
happens. First of all, there's no way that a multi-millionaire Russian oligarch has one security person. That's not gonna happen. He's got 5 people who have Uzis. So that whole, "You're gonna be behind this door,
Yeah, by
and, I
yourself.
got this one bodyguard that you can choke up." That's not gonna
Exactly.
happen. Second of all, when that person disappears or doesn't show up where they're supposed to,
Mm-hmm.
within 24 hours, it is an international
Oh
incident.
yeah.
Not only are the Russians looking for him, but the United States government will be looking because of the FBI, CIA, all of them.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no scenario where Reggie's character is just kind of chilling and out in the world anywhere. Nonetheless, he's now been on camera and on a video where he's the last person seen with this person alive.
Mm.
Reggie's dead in 2 weeks. He's dead in 2 weeks. That's what it comes to. He's dead 3 days after this movie ends. He's not even gonna make it two
He doesn't
weeks.
even make it a full 72, yeah.
He's not even making it through. Nope, he's not. He's
Oh
not.
man, that's crazy. Um, Same breath, same scenario. Does Patrice go on to live a very fulfilling career in the art world?
She's dead in 2 weeks too. Look, can we just go back? Let's go back and say, remember in Training Day when they were like, "Hey man, you mess with the Russians in Las Vegas, man. they put a bounty on your head. And Denzel was like, man, I'm a cop. Like, no, they kill cops, man. These play. Don't care about that. What are you crazy? No, you're not gonna make it. What are you talking about? Patrice is dead in 2 weeks, man. None of these characters are gonna live surviving this, man. This is like, I mean, she actually goes at the end of this movie, she goes to the mafia and it's like, well, I got powerful friends too. So now this is the mafia. Woman, you're dead. What are you talking about? And they're like, oh yeah, man, she got us because wow, she got a tape. What are we gonna do now? How are we gonna stop her? She got a tape. Like, what are you talking about,
Oh,
man? Do you watch movies? It's like, I mean, like, listen, I watched the documentary on what's his name, John Gotti. They had John Gotti like so many times, man, on stuff, man, before they actually got him on
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So many people like that.
Now
What are you talking about? People like she's dead in 2 weeks. That's the answer. Sorry,
No.
I got off a tangent. She's dead in 2 weeks. But I just want to remind people of in every movie you've ever seen. I mean, forget real life. Every movie you've ever seen where somebody's problem was the Russian mafia or the Russian anything. When was that problem solved peacefully and you got away scot free? Ever. No one. The only person that survived a negative confrontation with Russians is Rocky Balboa. That's it. Everybody else, they got
Not
theirs.
even him because he had brain damage.
Sure, but he's alive.
Is he though?
That's what I mean.
Is he?
That's what I mean. Everybody else, they caught a bad one. All right. What's
Oh
next?
no, Denzel. In
In what?
in what you call it?
Equalizer
in
2 or
Equalizer.
1? Yeah, 2.
1 and 2.
Yeah, okay. For sure. But yes, good point. He also had a certain skill set which allowed him to kill everybody, stay alive, and do it.
Mr. McCall.
Patrice don't have that skill set, so she's dead in 2 weeks.
Fair enough.
Not even 2 weeks.
And then my last question is, does Gordon get out of the business?
Yeah, Gordon gets out. This one, I'm gonna tell you what Gordon does. First of all, Gordon becomes a snitch
Oh, man.
because the FBI absolutely press him out. He absolutely rolls over on everybody that was connected with the New York mob. He rolls over on all them. He rolls over on the Russians. He would have rolled over on Patrice and Reggie, but they were dead already, so he doesn't have to do that. He cuts that beard off his neck, and then he takes off that hat with the buckle on it, and then he just
no more
goes to moves to Nebraska. And in Nebraska, he sells insurance.
Wow.
That's what he does.
So,
that's his life.
So no more yarmulke and no more beard, huh?
No more nothing.
Wow.
Nothing. He's going to be selling insurance for State Farm. He's gonna be have the red jacket on. He have the red jacket, the Jake from State Farm jacket. He's definitely turned red. And he might not make it out either, but he might.
He has a better chance than
Reggie and Patrice. They're not going to make it.
I got you. Oh man, that's crazy. And that's what we do with regards to the questions. Oh man.
There it is. All right, so boxes of popcorn on this. I'm gonna give this 2 boxes. Like I said, there's things about it that I do like. I do like the conversation about art. I do like the conversation about how value is created in art. I just felt like it was a little bit of a derivative kind of movie in that it just seemed like it was pulling from elements of things that did it better.
No, that's fair. That's fair. I'm going with 3 boxes. I think it was a nice change of pace from what I normally watch. I definitely like I said, I'm a true admirer of Sam Jack. I'm always down for a good Uma Thurman movie, whether it be My Ex-Girlfriend's a Superhero all the way to Kill Bill Volumes 1 and 2. You name it. So yeah, I'm running with 3, and I'm not going to be able to see Mr. Deathstroke. I'm not really a Magic Mike fan. No, I'm not trying to get down with that. So yeah, I'm running with 3.
Got it. So in terms of just final thoughts on it, I think, yeah, this movie deals a lot with the idea of art. I also think it deals with the idea of sacrifice. And I think different characters are going through the idea of what are you willing to give up to get what you want? And in some cases, the characters are taking, I would say, negative ways to get there. I really think with Patrice's character, it's not so much about wanting the money, it's about wanting the prestige of having a popular art house. So she's willing to deal with criminals in order to get that prestige. For Reggie, Reggie is willing to essentially be a murderer in order to keep his sister
Mm,
safe and to keep himself safe. The Russian oligarch is willing to sacrifice his safety and make himself vulnerable in order to get a certain piece of art. Different characters are willing to give up millions of dollars to get a piece of artwork that no one else can have.
mm.
So I just think there's this idea of like this question of what are you willing to give up or sacrifice to get to what you really want? And when you get it, is it really worth it?
Wow. Makes me think of a Nas line where he was like, by the time I could afford the car wasn't even important anymore. Like it wasn't of value.
Mm,
So
mm,
I definitely could appreciate that, which leads to my final thoughts of, throughout the entire segment today, we discussed the various themes of truth, art, creation, appreciation, greed, love, passion, representatives, perception versus reality, creativity slash creative expression. But the thing I think is chief amongst those, which leads or lends itself to these other things even come into existence, is value. CJ talked about it.
mhm,
What gives something intrinsic value versus what gives something a potential value. And we're not necessarily even talking about buying and selling or commodities or anything that along those lines, but more so about self value. Joe recognized in himself, in his character, that is that, hey, I don't want to be a killer forever. I value life.
mhm,
I only did this because of my love and appreciation of life, that being of my family, my sister. Um, and therefore, I want to have something beyond this. Now, obviously, he couldn't continue to remain in the art world, but he could still continue to create art for art's sake. I think
mhm,
Samuel Jackson also epitomizes this when he is a little bit of a quirk or an exception. He's a black Jewish gentleman in New York who owns a deli slash bakery. Who he makes these things that kind of are bagels, but they aren't really bagels. And he gets some type
mhm,
of, nudging, poking, made fun of because of it. And then you have Uma Thurman, who her character, Patrice, she gets lampooned. Hey, she's having a breakdown and she's sniffing Adderall to the point where it even seems sometimes like it's a little bit too much. It's like it's over the top acting. Um, but nonetheless, to the point where she's reaching a breaking point. Why? Because at one point she had these values where she valued herself, and she valued others, and she didn't want to see this misogynistic, chauvinistic, regardless of his talent, individual exploit people. And she took some heat for it. And I think the fact that she then stands up to the big bad mafia boss and says, "Hey, I'm going to prioritize myself. Why? Because I love myself more than I love the threat of you hurting me, harming me. I'm no longer hampered by those vices." And I think this overall theme of valuing is something that I want to show some appreciation to CJ because, it didn't take much, but, kudos to him for saying, hey, you know what? I know that you have an appreciation or an affinity for movies like I do. We share this creative space in common. And I want to go on this ride where we talk about one of our passions, one of the things we value. And in turn, it helped to allow me another outlet and give me a reason to watch movies every week. So, with that being said, the next movie that we're going to partake in, which also talks about the value, this time the love of money, greed being the root of all evil, is one of CJ's calls. And I'm glad that he did. It's called Margin Call.
Yes. Yeah. So Will's doing all he can to get all this money this week, man. I got to cash app you some more. We started off with me cash apping you, and now we're going to end with me cash apping you, which is a great transition in talking about margin call, which is definitely about the cash. Once again, Sticky Floors Podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts. We are on Apple Podcasts. We are on Spotify Podcasts. We are on YouTube. Please like, subscribe, and comment, and your comments help us to do this better. Peace.